I do that.
Well, to start off our agenda, there is going to be a change this morning. Obviously, we'll make a little adjustment. We're going to have our open comment session start. As soon as we get through that session, we'll immediately go into our legal session, which is a closed session. Just want to make everybody aware we were making that change so we would accommodate our guests this morning. And so at this time, going first. Anybody?
We can look at the signing list, or we can just go ahead and I hope everybody signed in because we will need that for the minutes, et cetera. But I guess, Ms. Tucker, just because you're front and center, if you want to start the line, and this is generally intended to where we've got the public comment session around the Region 8 discussion that's been going on. And then as well as we've asked Superintendent Satterley to talk about the Frankfurt request that she made last summer. So we can do that. If nobody has a preference on order, Tucker, if you want to bat last or bat first, it's kind of up to you.
Where would you like to go?
I think we'll be glad to give you a seat where the board can hear you.
Wherever, yeah.
Ms. Tucker will be seen next.
Good morning. For those of you that do not know me, I'm Kate Tucker. I'm the athletic director at Collins High School in Shelbyville. Born and raised in Shelbyville, and we are really excited to have Cornerstone enter our district as another Shelbyville school. That is awesome. Our community is growing. I know some folks' communities are not around the state, but Shelbyville is growing. And so we are excited to have another opponent, another short drive for another competition for us to be able to be included in. What we are hesitant about in moving around our district specifically is to wait until Cornerstone establishes themselves in the 30th district. Like I said, we are excited to grow and to have more people. We're just not quite ready to pull the trigger on what this situation might look like in the future. Right now, our district and region is affected by 7 sports, and Cornerstone is participating in 3 of the 7. So we actually have 4 sports that will not have that extra team in it, and 3 that will have the extra team. So right now we've got more sports that would be affected by redistricting that won't even have that extra team in it. So we hope that Cornerstone does expand. They've talked about that this will help their enrollment, that this will make them a larger school, and we are hopeful for them to expand. But right now they have, maybe around 50 to 60 high school students, and I just don't feel like the pace of their growth right now validates the redistricting of where we stand in the 30th. That's what Collins is asking for, is to just hold off and not turn over the apple cart too quickly. We've been in the 30th district since Collins opened in 2010. And so we have very strong community ties with our sister school across town, Shelby County High School. And so from a community perspective, we really feel like it's important for us to stay together. Our community was split in 2010 with the building of Collins High School. And that was really hard on us. It was hard on the city of Shelbyville. It was hard on the county. And we're just now kind of rebuilding from that and healing from that. And so it's becoming much more normal place now for us to have 2 high schools in one town. And when you're from a small town, that is a hard transition to build a second high school there and not have it in a different city within your county, but have it right there in Shelbyville too. So we are now in a much better place, but moving us districts would continue that kind of history of separation that our community has experienced. And I would say, I know that the recommendation from the 8th Region athletic directors, obviously I was there and had my vote, like everybody else did. But I would say that when we sat in the room, that we were not exactly clear about what the Board of Control was looking for. Were you looking for any solution? Were we looking for a solution that did not include 6 teams in a district? Were we looking for just anything that we could agree on? So when our proposals were submitted, I kind of felt like we all gave a proposal, but then when we got to the meeting, we discussed what the Board of Control was looking for, what you guys would be expecting, and we were not all on the same page on that. And so it kind of was, well, we felt like the Board of Control was looking for this, we're looking for this. And so I don't know if we all came to the table with the same understanding of expectations on what we really needed to accomplish. And so I don't want a quick decision to move to be something that looks like a competitive advantage for other people to be able to take a quick vote and move Collins because we can be seen as a competitive advantage, because that's obviously not what the district and region alignments are made for. So a lot of the centered discussion was about how close Collins is to the Oldham County schools. And yes, Collins is the closest to South Oldham. We are the closest school to South Oldham at 18 miles, but we are not the closest to Oldham and North Oldham. So actually, Henry and Eminence are both closer to Oldham and North Oldham than Collins is. So out of the 3 schools, Collins is closest to one, but not the other 2. So we would be a closest in a third of our competitions, but not the other 2/3. So that is when, and this is just in Google mileage, something that we can all look up and check out. But that is the realization if we're talking about geographics, and that is a lot of the discussion was that Collins was the closest geographically. And yes, we are to a third of them, but not to 2/3 of them. And so I do think that that's also important as to what are we defining as geographically closest? Are we talking about interstate miles? Are we talking about actual miles? Because there are other schools within our region that are closer or just as close to the Oldham County schools if it is a desire that we do not have a 3-team district in our region, that there are other solutions that geographically still make sense. And so I just wanted to also point that out, that there could be other considerations for geographically closer. And so I just ask that we don't make quick decisions on this and turn over the apple cart and maybe see how this plays out. See how Cornerstone affects the 30th and how their growth is, and maybe make a decision further on down the line when we're affecting more sports than what we're affecting currently. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Christy Otten. I am the athletic director and the designated representative for Gallatin County High School. I'm a little bit more of a nervous speaker than she is, so I've made no cards, so bear with me. But I just kind of wanted to highlight, you guys received several emails from our community, and one from myself in particular, and I just want to highlight some of those things. So the current proposal that you guys have does move Gallatin County from the 31st to the 32nd. I personally don't think that this is really in the best interest of anyone of the 31st. Gallatin County has been a part of the district that we are in, along with Carroll County, since the late 1930s. We have probably one of the oldest rivalries in not only the region, but the state as a whole. Henry and Owen have also been a part of our district for a long time. I'm not sure about Eminence, but I know Trimble's been around for 6 years. The rivalries that we have built are second to none. Anytime that we play each other, the stands are packed. And I just recently did the 31st district volleyball tournament, and Owen and Gallatin played in the very first match, and the stands were full. And Trimble and somebody else played after us, and we thought, well, I'm sure half of them are here for that. Our match ended, and most of the stands emptied out. There were maybe 50 people left, and TJ made the comment, Gallatin and Owen could play each other in a game of chess, and our stands would be full, because that's just the rooted rivalry that we have with them. Trimble has only been in the district for about 6 years, but you can't really tell that when you attend our district games. We are all smaller schools, and the rivalries that we have built are how we generate not only money, but excitement and unity in our communities. I feel like breaking this up would be an injustice to our athletes. I also want to point out that we are a 16 district by choice. When Brent asked for Trimble to join 33rd in 2021, each of the district ADs were asked separately how they felt. Each response was basically the same. Everyone was 100% in agreement with them joining. As small schools, we all understood the issues that Trimble was facing and felt that it was best for the school and its athletes to join our district. We fit together demographically, academically, and geographically. We actually may be the best district in the state as far as equality goes. We are all 1 and 2A schools, and there is no team that dominates any of our districts in any of our sports. Every school has a chance each year to compete for that district title and win a district title. And for a small school, that's a big deal. It simply makes perfect sense for us to stick together. But part of that agreement was that none of the current schools would be affected by that move. And the proposal that you have before you does not honor that. In essence, it kind of punishes our district for allowing Trimble in at the time and doing the right thing 6 years ago for something happening. I still believe that this decision is the right one, but I ask that you don't punish us now for the decision that we made back then. I ask that you just simply leave our district alone and leave it a 16 district because we enjoy it, and we have no problem with continuing to be a 16 district. And then just to elaborate a little bit on her statements with the voting process, I just want to point out that really technically no proposal received a majority vote. It was very split. We got it down to like 2, and so one before you, and then one that left us in the 31st. And when that happened, we voted again, and it was still very split. So the proposal that you see before you is so after we voted on the proposals, and nothing received a majority, it was then discussed, well, do we not send anything to the Board of Control, or does it look bad if we're not able to come to an agreement as a region and send something? So the proposal that you see before you is the one that had maybe 1 or 2 more votes than the other one. And so it was decided that we'll vote again, and we will vote yes, we want to send a proposal, or no, we don't. And that's where the 13-6 vote came in. Yes, we feel like we should send something. So this is what we're going to send you. So again, there was not a proposal that received majority, and I just wanted to make sure that that was clear to everybody. So thank you for your time.
Owen?
Thank you, guys. My name's Paul Holeen. I'm the athletic director at Alton County High School. Just kind of want to piggyback on what Kate was saying. So I believe it was September 3rd. We had an 8th Region Athletic Directors meeting. Commissioner Pack took time out of his day to kind of come up, talk a little bit about 8th Region realignment, a little bit about how the process works, a little bit how the state works, and said that, obviously, like adding another school in would kind of change kind of the dynamic of the 8th Region, and that there was that the athletic directors essentially could kind of come together again at a later date to try to present something on a united front to the Board of Control, but ultimately it kind of ended up with, the Board of Control's decision on how to realign the eighth region. After that, we were told to submit kind of proposals on our, like, by a certain date. I believe that date was the 21st, but that may be wrong. To submit proposals to, the athletic director at Spencer County, who's the president of the eighth region, and he would kind of pass those along to the group, and then we would get together and we met again as eighth region ADs on the 24th. Not really clear on the, like, how we were going to kind of decide. We discussed that when we kind of got there. But the one thing that I was, outspoken about at the meeting was that when we arrived to the meeting, we had 6 proposals that were sent to us. And then we were kind of told at the meeting, after the meeting had started, that one of the things that for the Board of Control question was no 3-team districts, no 6-team districts. And if Cornerstone Christian was coming in, Cornerstone Christian would need to be in a 5-team district because they don't play in over half the sports. So essentially, if they were in a 4-team, it's essentially a 3-team district for some of them. And that immediately eliminated, I believe, 5 out of the 6 proposals off of the table. Like, those parameters that kind of came in, those parameters were not made clear to the athletic directors before we were kind of voting. In a perfect world, you'd have 16 teams in each region, and you'd have 4 in each one, or there'd be 20, and then you would have 4 teams of 5. But obviously, we don't live in a perfect world, and that's kind of how, like, to piggyback onto what Kate was saying, that was my biggest frustration with the process. Was, like, obviously, if we'd have known going into this, like, the athletic directors with their principals could have come up with maybe a better solution than what they did, than what they had submitted. So thank you guys for your time. That's kind of the backstory of how, like, we kind of got there to kind of talk about what Kate was talking about. It unclear on kind of how the process was executed at the beginning. So, all right, thank you.
Mr. Walker? No thought, desire? Nothing? Mr. Ritchie? I'm going to butcher this, but Mr. Pruzaniski, I'm going to get close. Okay. Apologize.
Hi, I'm Mike Pruzanowski. I'm the athletic director at Grant County High School. Just a little bit of my background of what I wanted to say. I feel I have a little bit of a unique perspective. I've worked in one of the smallest states in the country, in Delaware. Right out of college, where if you drove 2 hours, no matter what direction, you wouldn't be Delaware anymore. Moved here to Kentucky back in 2006, worked up at Calvary Christian for 3 years. So one of the smaller schools in the state, competing against Scott, Campbell County. So learned very early on that Kentucky is not designed by classification, but just by location. Moved to Colorado. So we had moved to one of the larger states physically, and was part of a 13-team league, 15 schools in basketball, where the 2 furthest schools apart were 4.5 hours one way. And so lived in Colorado Springs. We had teams in the mountains, teams in the southeast corner, close to Kansas, one by the New Mexico border. So teams with wide different needs. We had 7 in Colorado Springs. So when we made decisions, no decision fit every school in our league. Everything was based in classifications. We were all between 250, 600 schools. And so when we made a decision, and I was president for the last 8 years up until we moved back to be close to our grandkids in Kentucky, we understood that decisions are made based on 13 schools, not necessarily a school in Colorado Springs or a school in the mountains or Lamar that's out near the Kansas border. So what they shared so far was definitely accurate of our meeting, because coming in, wasn't exactly clear if we were just trying to take care of the 3-team district. We did have that discussion, are we evening all 4 districts, and being in a school that wasn't part of that discussion, because Grant County and District 32 was the only discussion was, are we putting another school there? the mission of that meeting wasn't exactly said, are we just taking care of the 3 schools, just taking care of 6 schools? I would just ask if when you're making this decision, is that what is the complete desire of Region 8? You know, I know when Commissioner Tack was there, but the biggest one was the 3-team district when we met. And if we're just looking at fixing a 3-team district, there are several options with that. Decision we came up with just one. If it was to even out all 4 districts, because as Paul said, we don't have 16 teams, which would make it easy. We don't have 20 that we can divide 4 and 5. It does make it a little more difficult, but if we're looking at evening all of it, you know, looking at Collins looked at what the best option was. Gallatin coming into 32nd. Yes, Owen's closer to Grant. We're only 20 minutes apart. We kick it out, turn down 22, be there in 20 minutes. But then Owen going up to Simon Kenton's a little bit different. So I think if you're looking to balance out the whole district, the decision we came up with was probably the best one. But the mission wasn't exactly clear. So I'd ask you to look at what we're looking at. Are we looking to even the whole region, or are we looking to just take care of the 3-team district and use that as the decision rather than any individual school? Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
There was no one else signed up except for Frankfurt people. So if anybody didn't sign up that wanted to speak, if not, Ms. Satterley and Mr. Rogers, if you all come forward from Frankfurt Independent. Aaron, nobody seems to want to sit in your seat. I guess it's the hot seat.
Which one is different?
It's the hot seat this time of year.
Well, looks like we're the ones here to kind of throw a wrench in everything else. So it's nice to hear all the other comment first. I submitted comments, but since it seemed pretty not scripted, I'm probably going to go off script a little bit. You remember, I'm Sherry Satterley. I'm the superintendent of Frankfurt Independent. This is Joe Rogers. He is the principal of Frankfurt High School. And Amy Duncan is here too. She is our athletic director. If you remember, I came to you on May 6, 2025 with a request to be removed from the 11th region and moved to the 8th region. I'll read what I have here and then I'll go off script a little bit. The Frankfurt Independent School District strongly urges the KHSAA Board of Control to approve the proposal to move Frankfurt High School from the 11th and 9th regions in golf to the 8th region for all non-class athletics. This realignment is strongly supported by both geographic and financial reasoning for our district. Geographically, this move makes sense because of the following. In the current 11th and 9th regions, Franklin County, where Frankfurt High School is located, and let me reiterate that Franklin County High School and Western Hills High School are not my concern. Frankfurt High School is. Franklin County is the only county that doesn't border Fayette in the 11th region. Franklin County borders several counties in the 8th region, 5 to be exact. In the 11th, we only border Scott County. In the 8th, we border Owen, Henry, Shelby, Anderson, and Woodward. This realignment would result in an average travel difference of only 7.9 miles less per trip for Frankfurt High School compared to the current alignment. It says less, but it's actually more. But when you take into account that the legislature only reimburses mileage and not driver pay, and we are on the interstate going to Fayette County at the prime time of day, I don't know, I'm sure you all know, I mean, I travel up here for my son to have soccer practice at 5:30, and sometimes I sit on the interstate for an hour. And bus driver pay for us kills us because we have 5 drivers and every single one of them is in overtime by that time. That's time and a half. We do not have a plethora of bus drivers wanting to drive athletic trips. The last payroll, one of my bus drivers was the top paid employee in the district, including myself.
Spaghetti.
The last payroll, because where we have extended fall and spring breaks and we do programming on those breaks, and we've paid time and a half on those breaks. A bus driver was one of the highest paid employees in my district on that payroll, above including the superintendent. Which is not a bad thing, but when you look at our district, who sits on now, the number is even more staggering. It was 73%, I think, the last time I talked to you. 73% tax exempt property. We are now above 75% tax exempt property because our PVA has, actually it's more staggering because he has reassessed a lot of properties in our district and we're still above 75%. And some of those state and federal properties have not been reassessed since the 1990s. So we all know what's happened to property value. If they were to be reassessed, that number 75% would be even bigger. He just added 425 million to the capital. So there's that. According to KY Stats, all Region 11 districts are aligned with the Central Kentucky Educational Cooperative here in Lexington, with the exception of us in Franklin County. According to KY Stats, the Frankfort Independent District is aligned with the Ohio Valley Educational Cooperative, which is also the affiliation of most other Region 8 schools. Woodford County is in the 8th region, while Frankfort Independent is in the 11th. Therefore, to travel, we go like this, to go to our respective regions. Woodford County borders one Region 8 district, yet we border 5 counties. And if you add eminence into that, we'd say 6 high schools. Financially, the small mileage difference is critical, as the Frankfort Independent School District is the highest taxing district in Kentucky. And kudos to my taxpayers, they do not argue about that tax rate. We just approved a 102.9 tax rate and a fourth nickel tax for facilities. It loses approximately $8 million in revenue because over 75% of our properties are tax exempt. Although transportation reimbursement only covers mileage, relocating to the 8th region is anticipated to reduce bus driver hours due to lower traffic, providing much needed operational savings for our financially constrained district. We ask for your favorable consideration to grant this request, and I'll piggyback on what one of the other athletic directors said about tradition and rivalries and things like that. Frankfort High School will celebrate 100 years in December. And we have been in the 5th, the 6th, the 8th, the 11th, the 6th, the 8th, and the 11th in that time. So it just kind of feels like we've been tossed around a little bit. I know competition is not supposed to be a part of it, but somebody else brought it up. We are not in a district with 1A and 2A schools. We are not in a region with 1A and 2A schools. And I know we're talking about non-class athletics, but to hear that as a positive from another school really breaks my heart for mine. So we also, I wish I could say those things, and we've been around for 100 years, including one of the oldest historically Black high schools. And we still celebrate that today. And we would love to continue celebrating those athletic wins. So thank you for your time.
I don't think so. Anyone else?
In case they depart during the legal sessions, and I have a specific question.
Yeah, they're coming.
I think, do you guys feel like you need another crack at it? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that if you guys got together again, is that now that you know what the mission is, or
I would say we're still clear.
I don't think anybody knows what the mission is.
We now stop to consider that there might be a home team.
Change everything.
That does. We were under the impression that regions. That could definitely make a difference.
It's different for the guys. So that can change, that will change everything.
I guess the question is, what is the board looking for?
I guess we're gonna have to discuss that.
Not that kind of discussion, Jeff. Not right now. Because they've got some decisions to make.
Right now, what we're doing, just so you all know, we're trying to figure out what you all and present those perspectives to us. Many of us don't live in this area around the 8th region, so we just want to try and gather as much information as we can. Appreciate everybody coming here. It kind of gives us a better insight to what's going on. And not any other comments. I'll make a move that we go into legal session at this point. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you all.
I will eat
Welcome back, everybody. I know that we have gotten a little bit off script. At this time, we're going to move into our work session and go through our agenda items. No action will be taken. This is just there are no actions taken. Just discussion in our legal session.
All right, moving on with the agenda for the work session, item 2.1.1, non-championship reports from the staff.
Anybody?
Nothing additional than what's in the report.
Okay. Item 2.1.2, sports reports from the staff.
Feel free to elaborate where you need on these. I'm going to.
We've got reports, but there's anything you want.
Joe on golf? Anything on golf?
No, I mean, I kind of highlighted the challenges in the report. Miss Moyer was there, so she saw the optics of waiting through a rain delay, meeting with the teams, sending them out for the first hole. Immediately it starts pouring, so that was just phenomenal. Within 2 holes, the rain was over it. We got the round in, everything was good. So
called the Sarah Bryan ball.
So wait a minute.
Wasn't even in the city, guys. It was 2.5 hours away.
No. So basically, given what happened at that event and the next event, it's done.
They're blaming me.
Yeah, so rolling in field hockey where it also rained the entire time.
I was there for that.
He was there, Donna was there, everyone. I was there. Apparently I caused rain as well. I did want to. It did go well in the rain. But I did want to highlight the fact that we moved that Saturday semifinal round to a Monday to kind of hope you boosted crowd a little bit. And in spite of the weather, it did actually. Ticket sales went up on that Monday, which I thought was great considering Corey on Monday. But yeah, other than that, it went good. Sacred Heart came out with the victory and smooth sailing besides their little hiccup prior to the tournament.
Cross country was a sunny day. Beautiful. Actually broke 2 course records in the first 2 races. So it's a good day. We always want to thank our friends at the KHSAA, the Cross Country Coaches Association, for their help and all their efforts and the officials in helping us get the course ready. I know you may want to cover the conflict we have coming up, but otherwise the day on November 1st was a good day. So we appreciate those of you that were there helping us with awards and handing out trophies.
As Sarah mentioned, and if you look at the report, a couple of things I want to point out. Obviously, the rank and file like the cross country meet at the horse park, but it is without question not a very inexpensive venue. So that's why we share with you. Different than it was pre-pandemic, we are paying a significant amount of money per runner, as well as every ticket sold is a $4 parking charge, which is almost essential because when they operate the ticket gates at the horse park, we've had Ironwood's Pike get shut down before. We've actually had our cross country meet stopped because we had so much traffic backed up. So buying that parking out is a way to eliminate that problem. So our fans are paying through the ticket instead of paying at a gate. It does make it, it does make it a little pricier, but I know that the atmosphere out there everybody likes. With that said, we also know that in 2026, the World Equestrian Games, not the World Equestrian Games, the Breeders' Cup will be back in Lexington. And when that happens, the area that we use for cross country is used for the horses that are resident horses all year. They're boarded out there because they use the nicer area for all the horses that are coming in for the Breeders' Cup, because they use every square inch of that park that week. So we'll be back with you in January as far as what plans we might need to make for 26, whether it's a adjustment in our schedule for a year, So we stay out there, or if we have to find another site, stay on the same weekend. We might have to create a 1-year conflict. I know Mr. Copes dealt with that in volleyball when the Breeders' Cup was here, because hotel rooms weren't around. We've had to move stuff around, but we'll have you a calendar answer right at the first of the year.
If somebody wanted to suggest an alternative site for that year.
If you can find one that can secure attendance, which is not in your general area,
So it's just out.
it's wide open. It's a great course.
Yeah, I mean, I know they hosted the national championships,
Absolutely.
HTC championships.
Yeah.
I know.
They hosted a lot of big events.
When the sponsors are paying the price, it's different. It does, but no, if surely. that
We
needs to be
hosted
part.
a cross-country tournament there and do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
But
What would be the holdup on just the cost of renting Tom Sawyer?
No, it's the ability to make it secure. We've looked at Sawyer before. Well, TP Tom, right? He's still AP Tom Sawyer. We looked at that. We looked at Masterson Station, which has 3 neighborhood entrances, but you can only close off one. We've looked at other places. So we'll look at other options and bring you back a plan, whether it's staying out there for a different date or looking at an alternative site.
All right. Item 2.1.3, Arbiter Sports Update.
Can we pick up a couple of the other fall in case there's anything?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry.
Soccer, just thanks to Mr. Kelly for hosting us for the semifinals, and then we got to do the finals out there at Lexington Sports Stadium. Mr. Crom, Mr. Wilhoit, and Ms. Moyer. I think anybody else? Yeah. Mr. Washington. The kids loved it. Had a great atmosphere. It was a good event. We certainly worked well with the staff out there, so they were receptive to us. When you look at the report, you can see our numbers. Overall, we didn't necessarily see a jump in attendance, which tells you that it's all about teams, and all about the weather for soccer. That's what's going to dictate how many people come to these things.
I tell you, the venue, I'd never been there, and it is absolutely amazing. I mean, we need to do whatever we can to keep that championship there. I mean, I'd even love, and I don't know if they'd ever do it, if you had to space it out a week apart to do the Final Four game and it's just an amazing facility. I was so impressed, and every seat is great. I mean, you can go to the very back row. I mean, there's nowhere in it that was a bad seat, and you even had shelter from rain in the upper half of those bleachers. So it was, or chairbacks, everything was chairback, but it was very, very, very nice facility.
I will say, and I know the Commissioner Tacker's always working with us to try to find something. This year especially, I was really, really nervous. If we were out there for the semifinals.
But the rain,
I'm
yeah.
not sure we would have been able to stay out there with as much rain that came down earlier. Miss Warner was wearing half of it.
Yeah. Got dumbfounded.
But, yeah, I mean, we'll continue to do that. I know that the board's looking at some things with soccer as well. Commissioner Tacker's been very helpful. Thanks.
One of the things that was especially helpful about this event, and the move out there, not only for the county schools host, but we've had absolutely zero interest from any other community about hosting cross country, for example. None, zero, have ever initiated an interest. And so we were proud and happy that not only did the city of Lexington reach out regarding the soccer originally, but when the sporting club came to us, they really rolled out the red carpet because they wanted the event. And it's long been a priority here. You go where you're wanted. So that's a big thing for any of these. Most of them are pretty well set, but obviously we have a hiccup for next year and on one event. And, we an initiative there because most of the time our events are not what they call heads and beds events. So the tourism bureaus don't get involved. The convention bureaus don't get involved. There's no money being made because hotels are being used very much. So it's important that these communities show initiative, not just that one person said they're kind of interested. Thanks, Chad.
Volleyball, we wrapped that up. Thanks to Mr. Yeast for hosting that. We did have during the regional tournament our first ever rain delay. We were in the middle of a match and the roof started leaking and we had to come back the next day, but we lived through that.
Miss Jackson. The football playoffs are going okay. Obviously, last week, schools who all fall had to be subjected to random wheel spins to decide which games got moved to Thursday to alleviate official shortages. Suddenly found the ability to move their games to Thursday last week. They'll be reminded of that next year as we talk rules clinics and stuff. But obviously, they people had to do what they thought best, and everybody was a meteorologist. But the first round did get played. You've got the chart in there we've been putting the last few years. It was a really interesting thing. A couple things happened in the football playoffs that we all know about. We, as usual, had a handful of teams withdraw. It's been happening more with our smaller schools. Three of those schools that pulled out had numbers problems all year long. This was not an unexpected event. We had a game played during week 10. I think had a school or week 11 that had a school play with 15 against a school that had 12. So our numbers were in a couple of schools were not especially strong. They are looking at their youth programs. They're looking at their middle and high school. I think most of them, if they can keep the kids that are in the neighborhood of the school, they'll have enough kids. But 563 has changed the dynamic of kids making choice. And so we've got to realize that there's going to be some issues. I've talked to I've talked to several of the coaches that really have a problem with a first round bye as far as preparing your team to go into the playoffs, but they also really have a problem with a team pulling out on them when the bracket's set. So we'll continue to look at that. It's interesting if you look at the attached note that's got the score comparisons. It's really interesting that the games when the first round games when the teams are played in district are tighter games. Is that because they have relationships and they don't want to worry about running it up on somebody? Is that an issue or is it just coincidence? But we always provide that data. It's just good for you all to look at. And we'll continue to look at it as we go forward. About this year was about 32 points, I think, was the average. Some were higher, some were lower. This is always the week that discussion gets held, and always the week that we point out that don't forget the next piece of paper is about our participation is at levels it hasn't been at in a long time. So is the extra week of practice for everybody, is it worth it? You all got to decide things like that. I can give you feedback. I can give you the feedback from the school, but I think that the football playoffs will always generate discussion. I will say this, and I've been very public with it. I know our friends in the media have heard me say this before. You always have that guy sitting at his probably on his computer in his mom's basement, as the old saying goes, who's complaining about more people getting in the football playoffs who doesn't say a word about the 10-run baseball game or the 10-run softball game or the running clock in basketball or something when a mismatch happens early. So, just think about it. You all have to make those kind of policy decisions. I just wanted you to see it. This is that week it's always talked about. So figure we talk about it.
I've got a question. I know it's come up. What is our policy? I think it's very clear on football. It's just all sports. I know that with some of the weather and some of the changes and dropouts, we're having senior nights and that kind of stuff.
That'll be clarified next year. The first round of playoffs is postseason and is a neutral game. You're able to host because of your seated position. There shouldn't be senior nights. There shouldn't be activities for parents. This is supposed to be a championship round, and we're going to have some clarity of that in all the sports because it's gotten a little bit too prevalent. It's a bit, in some cases, it's almost presumptive to think you're going to have that game and can have these kind of things. But I think it is something that from a basically sportsmanship and good practice act, that's for your regular season and your fans at your home game, not the first night. But that clarity we can certainly make.
Cheer dance wrapped up their regionals this past weekend, cheer on Saturday and dance finished on Sunday. You probably saw the cheer dance state time schedules went out yesterday. And we're quickly planning for the December championship at GRC. So hope to see you there.
Hey, you skipped me. Mine's 4 numbers.
Yeah.
Was the last one?
So nestled right between big football and big cheer and dance on December the 10th, we have esports, and that'll again be at Cornerstone UGA campus. So we've got a lot of interest this year. I've already put ticket sales, Karen put ticket sales up, so we've had some schools wanting to come just bring their teams and so forth. Actually, the playoffs start. This is the last week of regular season. Playoffs start Monday. So the entire championship starts Monday. Some teams have 64 team brackets, some as low as 8, but looking forward to that. It's a little different this year. We did add a game, Street Fighter 6. It's getting some traction there, so we're going to culminate the whole day with having them up on the stage, having them up on the big screen, and kind of highlight that. I think it's exciting for those kids. And then we no longer have League of Legends, but and since it was one of our inaugural titles, I thought I'd just bring the two furthest advancing teams that make it into what they call the Central League and just have like a little exhibition match there for them as a send off. So hope to see some of y'all down there.
If you've not been to that, it is a very unique atmospheric environment there on UK's campus. It's actually it's pretty unique and it's cool, honestly. These are kids who don't get the typical athletic recognition. Very good. Mr. Couch is almost always there to help out, and it
Sign him up.
Julian, can I go back to the restrictions on postseason things again? Just one last thing, because it doesn't seem like an appropriate thing to do in a football game.
Right.
I will tell you, there have been times, whether it was snow, the last week of basketball season, where you had your senior night playing and all your games got canceled, or softball, baseball, where we have rained out this entire week leading up to the district tournament. In between our district opponents, it's like, hey, can we recognize our seniors tonight? I mean, you're not saying that would be something that.
No, I think what we've said in an emergencies are emergencies, but planning it as some schools did for the first round of the playoffs, okay, probably not so. But yeah, emergencies are going to happen.
All right, now item 2.1.3, Arbiter Sports Update.
Rob, is there any, I don't think there's anything systematic. You might want to tell them what's coming the 1st of December, some advantages.
Yeah.
Tomatoes ready.
No, I think the fact that it's only been 2 seasons now, but two, fall season and winter season, I think it's going quite well. I know one of them acknowledged that it's going pretty good right now. So they are working on bracketing to replace the tournament manager, which is a lot of the ADs use to enter their regular season tournaments. And they've been entering the postseason tournaments of district regions as well. And it's going to be pretty nice. I think it'll give all the schools a nice regular season bracket view. Like I said, automatically advances the teams and so forth, make it scores. I think that'll really clean a lot of things up. And then working on some communication piece, because as the commissioner will say, we've kind of gotten behind a little bit on the admin stuff because we focused so much on the school side. So we'll get the communication tools coming out in December. I think it'll help. Hopefully the schools will have that same piece as a directory after the first year sometime. Let's see. That's probably about it right now.
A couple of things that we're working with, and really cannot thank David and Marty and the staff at the department in technology. We're a little concerned about email fatigue because there's so many messages that come out from the Arbiter system whenever anything's done, and we want to be sure that that as we look at online transfers, which is going to be my last update, we want to be sure that people they don't get so desensitized to so many coming that they miss the key ones. And we know the email read rate is not particularly high. We certainly proved that in the last couple of weeks with our notices about bowling and wrestling and basketball clinics that coaches don't read. So we know that there's been issues there with them absorbing that. So we are concerned. Now, we had targeted starting about the middle of the fall, working with the Arbiter team, we've targeted the Christmas break period, start of the second semester, to identify some beta people that are going to help us with the transfer system. You have to understand that we have to have the people that are involved every day in the processing of the current system involved in evaluation and making sure it's ready. And I can tell you the load of transfers this year we've never been this high in terms of appeals, in terms of transfers. So it's very important to make sure this is correct, not that it's fast. But we talked to Arbiter about it. They're ready for Rob's beta team. It's now in our hands to go through final evaluation of forms, making sure every word's in the right place, making sure council feels good about that. And that beta team should be able to go at the start of the second semester, and ideally at the end of the spring we're full blow as they get ready for next year's transfers.
And one thing too, I think we've mentioned, but we've got some other states coming on, so we look at that strength in numbers. You know, we were guinea pig, but we got Montana's already on. Virginia and West Virginia's coming on. So as anything, the more schools, the more state associations get involved, it's only going to benefit all of us. Yeah, it's been good being a guinea pig, and I still get to meet with twice a week with some. Sometimes I pull some other staff in. I still meet with their development team, whereas some of these other states that are coming on don't get that same top level development team. So I appreciate as always all the ads that take their time and meet with them and try to contribute to the design of things. So if you ever want to be guinea pigs on that, just let me know.
I think I said this last year, but November is the month to have an athletic director with time to consider things. So this is the month. Everything up to this month, we have been trying to survive the fall season, but now November's to catch up, try to get ready. So
that's a good thing about some of the timing of their other changes too. It's been very good. No, sir.
Item 2.1.4 officials licensing updates.
I think just one of the things, if you look at just the raw numbers for the spring sports, they look really, really low. They're always late to register, but if you compare them to last year, November 13th, they're about the same as they were last year. So it's just the nature of when they choose to license.
Item 2.1.5 disqualification report and comparison.
You want to start this one? Well, we give you this report every time. There's a couple sports that had disqualifications, don't normally get them. One of our sports that has a lot of them didn't have as many, and then one of our sports we were really hoping we'd see a decline didn't. So I think that obviously there is a dynamic. If you remember the soccer change we made, there's 3 or 4 bullets at the top of the soccer rule on penalties that are a lesser penalty, and we've had officials say that the severe penalty was a deterrent sometimes for them thinking, do I really want to do this? And with that lesser penalty, they've been more likely to just administer the rule like they're supposed to. So is that the reason the numbers are a little bit up? You'd have to ask every single official. But it's interesting there. And we've got it on that list. You see it's broken down by those categories now, which is really important as we look at the rule to try to figure out where the Chad is the rules interpreter and other people involved as assigners, where do they need to focus their training? But obviously it's a pretty good number. Well, I was trying to be politically correct, but yes, Ms. Jackson would say that there might be a sport out of control in another area. We do have the list by sport, by school, and everything else that you can see.
2.1.6 transfer and appeals eligibility report.
Yeah. Well, and the commissioners already referred to the fact that continuing to see even higher numbers. And I know that you folks in the schools are seeing the same thing. The mobility of our student population across the state has never been higher. It's an issue that every year it feels like every time we get up here we keep saying it's more, and that's in fact the case. Right now we have, really speaking, I always say we do between 80 and 100 appeal hearings every year. We're already at 74 for the year in terms of what we've received. So that number is high. I think the same period last year, I think Commissioner Tech, I think you thought it was around 58.
58,
what we found. So we're continuing to see those numbers come higher. What does that cause us to have to do? Obviously we have appeal dates to the calendar. Normally in December, I only have 2 days that we use for appeals because that can handle volume. We have doubled that, so we have 4 appeal dates set aside. Keep in mind, that's during the we continue to prioritize the appeals based on timing as well. We're finished up all of our fall sports. Obviously, we've got a couple matters in football that are still pending. We have scheduled all of our winter appeals for basketball. At this point, we don't have any that are waiting for a date. I do have some that have been sitting on for a while for spring, fall for baseball and fast pitch mostly, that we are starting to schedule those now so that we can make sure we have before the season starts on that. But we've been effectively managing them and trying to make sure that nobody gets a unnecessary delay. But that caused us to have to add the dates, and that's okay. But that's certainly going to be the new norm is that we continue to see that. Perhaps Mr. Bilberry want to chime in just in a general sense as well.
The only thing I would chime in on is just the what you've already alluded to in terms of just the increase in numbers. I think that moms and dads are dissatisfied and sometimes just impatient about certain things, and you see a lot of moving around. That's probably led to the increase in the numbers. So,
what has been an interesting dynamic is to watch the amount of senior school administrators who, I don't want to use the word complicit, but it's the first word that comes to my mind, involved in cases more than they have been before. And I'm talking about even at the superintendent level, involved in cases that are very unique. And, at the same time, publicly saying they need to respect the membership and respect the membership rules and all that. They may not be modeling that with everything they're doing. So it's been an interesting dynamic. We've also had a run of individuals who like it here. They forgot for a while that they liked it here and they went somewhere else, but now they like it here, so they want to come back. And that's happening more frequently. You all know there was the current version, the approved version of transfer rules online addresses some things at the delegate's request and our request that may help clean that up. But I can tell you the tone that we're getting from as we talk to members of the legislature and who drive philosophy around laws, mobility is a key point, being able to go where you feel like they're going to better suit your needs. So we're going to have to watch that and see what else this does. Right now, the volume is deterring from some other things that the three primary people in our office that deal with these are doing regularly. There are days and stretches of days that there's nothing else that can be done. They're so wrapped up in this volume. So we continue to look not at ways to make less kids eligible, but in ways to refine the process. Darren's done a really good job of keeping up with timelines. We'll have in the January meeting some more drilled down data from our study because we got to have that ready for some of the General Assembly members. And we know that we're just at chance that we're in a very mobile time for people. And we may all get skeptical and say, well, it's because they don't want to stick to this and don't want to do it. It's really just lots of reasons. You all see that in your own district. We're just more mobile than we were. So we've got to be sure that we modernize as well.
Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
I don't know how deeply you dove into it, but when any of the changes we made, would that clean it up, like the 20%? Have you looked at, would that catch anybody? Do you know?
Yeah, I have been paying attention to that as we go through because honestly, that's not the policy, that's not the rule right now.
Right.
But we like to keep that in the context, especially in the hearing room. If this had gone through, it's after this, where would we be? I think we are seeing some that would go away. There's no doubt it would have an impact. It would reduce the number. That's that for sure. How much? That's anecdotal at best. But there is a drop. I can tell you that the trend that we see right now, just looking at the situations that are coming through, is if a kid has established this change of schools at the beginning of the year and they're going through the process, routinely at the beginning of the year, we're seeing those be more granted favorably. It's the things that happen in the middle of the season. Perhaps they played, perhaps they didn't, perhaps they tried out. and then made the change. Those obviously have a little bit different of a situation, and we're seeing that in the results of the appeal. We're seeing a little bit more ineligibles from the hearing officer right now than we were seeing a year ago. But I think that's based on the realities of these individual transfers. I mean, we're seeing some stuff where our schools, and we continue to for those of you that are athletic directors and principals and you're in our regional meetings, you hear us say, give us the information. Don't just complain about something. Give us the information. We're seeing that. We had a case the other day where we had a text message from one student or from one student's parents to an administrator that point blank said, my child has decided he wants to play this sport at this school, so we have changed schools. And as you could expect, the hearing did not go favorably for that person because that text message clearly states, that the move is being made for athletic reasons. And so we're seeing a little bit more of that. We're seeing a little bit more evidence come in many instances, which is a good thing. So I think that's the kind of trend we're seeing that we are going to see fewer the new changes that we had, but I still think that overall are going up just because of the continued mobility.
The other thing though, Mr. Wilhoit, we are really hearing from different factions of the membership about that. We want to be sure we're very clear to everybody. A pattern of enrollment at a school is not a criteria for making a decision. Chapter 13B requires every individual case to be reviewed based on its facts. So the fact that some school got 4 kids and some school doesn't have any doesn't mean the one at 4 is violating anything. It doesn't mean the one that's got 0 is doing anything wrong. You can't use the fact that somebody's gotten 4 new kids as some kind of ammunition that it's a problem with all of them. It's a fact-intensive review, and we have discussed that on more than one occasion with members of the legislature, and the fact that because we're under that 13B, you try to find a smoking gun where possible, but the mere fact that they all coincidentally came, or whether non-coincidental, you can't factor it into your final answers.
No,
that's our problem.
And that's one of the things that we actively engage in discussions, whether it's Mr. Billberry in the initial process or when we get to a hearing. I'll specifically ask, hey, you had this kid, this kid, this kid, this kid that all made the same transition from this school to here, and we try to get in and examine that and see if there's anything that they're going to testify to that would indicate that there's a trend that they're moving as a group. Most times, people are saying there's not. I can tell you a specific time this year, there was a student that the mom said, yeah, all his friends were going to school. I wanted to go with him to play as well. And, that they were candid, and unfortunately for that student, that obviously meant they got an unfavorable result on the appeal. But that's the rule. That's the way it's supposed to work. So we try to do those things, but we have to stick to the record. And that's one of the beauties of having an independent hearing officer, is they are reviewing that, and they don't care about our trends or our data. They're just worried about the record, the rule, and what it says, making an equitable ruling based on the evidence. And so that's somewhat why we really try to protect the sanctity of that process.
Yep.
Item 2.1.7, report of section 2 meeting.
Anybody have anything other than the written report on the making? Nothing else.
Item 2.1.8, review of the region tournament experimental format criteria and future.
This is in terms of a report because there's now no pending action for you. We'll continue developing competition rules alternatives, but the 11th region conducted a follow-up vote and did not get 2/3 and chose in favor of changing the bracketing. So they're going to look at all kinds of things that they have jurisdiction over related to the management of the tournament, but the bracketing, they will remain the same for this year, and I suspect they'll come back at some point if they get enough support. The 7th region, just at the 11th hour, prepping for this meeting, made a request for baseball and softball that they use the exact same parameters that the 6th is used. There's no reason for me to deny that because we've already approved exactly what the 6th is doing in a couple sports, so theirs will be approved. So And as you look at alignment issues, I think that, it's worthy of all of us talking to the member schools about sometimes is it the alignment or can the format fix things? And somebody mentioned that in one of the pieces of testimony that, is there an alternative format? And I just applaud our schools for trying to work within parameters to try something new. They may be like the first region soccer and come back after a year and say, no, I'm done. We don't want to do this anymore. Or they may come back and say, it's perfect. Let's keep doing it. Thank them for that.
Yeah, I would say, and obviously our region is going to try that this year in the 6th and 7th, and in softball and baseball. I think one thing, there's definitely some pros, the ability to have 2 weeks to play out the full region, gets you builds in some extra time, and then, but if you're at a school who predominantly is the favorite or is going to be the number 1 seed in the district because of regular season games every year, you're going to host the super region pod every year. I think some schools would probably want to look at it and think, if I'm the 2nd seed and maybe me being able to host the district tournament every few years might give me the advantage to win the district tournament and somehow beat the number 1 seed in the district tournament, it might be nice to play that event at home. And right now, if you're never the number 1 seed, I think the 6th region is looking at some alternatives as to make sure that the same school is not hosting every sport every year in that first round pod. But it's probably going to take a year or two to sort of see things that are hard that need to be revisited and things that are good. So I was curious to see what your thoughts were. And I was sitting there thinking earlier when the 8th region discussion was being talked about, where maybe you have the overall region numbers meet the threshold of a 2/3 vote, but a single district doesn't want to change. And you have a scenario where a district wants to not do it, but they are overvoted out by the rest of the other 3 districts. And would that even come into play? Is it just a pure overall regional vote is to hit 2/3?
Well, I think that at this point, there's a couple of issues that were brought up in public comment that are worth looking at, just procedures anyway.
Right.
Whether it's how voting's done, whether it's, pre-announcing, whatever criteria you want to do. If we're going to, the problem is that you want some local input without abdicating. So that probably should go on that list of things to be looked at as we look at those criteria for those regional decisions. Because I think that everybody's going to have their own opinion on what happened at a couple of the meetings in the 8th, but I think that there's probably targeted answers on certain things. And if, in your all's case, if baseball, softball is the issue, getting everything around the graduation week, and you just want to do baseball, softball, that's probably good. Maybe that's an alternative there. But I do worry a little bit about the fact that what if that, we've got a situation, and this situation, where because of the numbers of schools that are in one county, it actually, unless one of them breaks away, it's impossible to get 2/3. That's simply that's the layout. They have 9 that are not in Pike County and 6 that are in Pike County. And so, they have to have a breakaway somehow. So we need to safeguard against that. So as we talk about that this year with stuff on those alternative regional brackets, et cetera, that's got to be a factor. The voting procedures, the numbers of voting, et cetera.
I agree.
Yep.
All right, item 2.1.9 is to accept the operations reports as submitted and direct any necessary actions. Item 2.2.1, status of regulation promulgation.
I can tell, this is actually a good illustration of how laborious this process can be. On October 14th, the Education Committee met and our regulation was on the agenda. So at the conclusion of that meeting, our regulation took effect on October 14th. Remember, back in September, we had already voted on the proposals for the following year. So they're overlapping. We're already voting on changes to the regulation that haven't even been implemented yet. I think that's kind of the oddity of this process. So we're happy it went through, and it went through. I mean, we actually moved through very quickly compared to some agencies because it's only about, 14 months that it took us to do it.
This is not the change that was approved this year in September. This is changes from June of 24 related to sports medicine and September of 24 from the annual meeting. It took that long. So we're already, as he said, in September of 25, we voted on things when we didn't even have a completed regulation because of this convoluted process that we have to go through to get the state to approve everything. It's not State Board of Education. It's just the legislature.
We actually are moving faster than most agencies.
Exactly.
Because, like I say, 14 months to go from start to finish is pretty quick.
But even though those final touches aren't in, we can still go ahead. Like if that's been passed for the following year, if we're just waiting on the final approval, does that like that 20%? It'll still go into effect starting next year.
We make that decision when we see we've got hoops to jump through before. So we've got to go through LSAC review. We got to go through the state board. We've got to make sure there's no hurdles there.
So if everything else is,
that's when we take another.
I got you.
Yeah, we got to be sure.
I think the answer is that's what we're pointing to.
Exactly.
But we don't know that until we go.
Sure.
In general, if the changes are student friendly, they're more likely to be able to go on a regular schedule. If we were to decide suddenly that more kids are subject to additional restrictions, then that's going to have to go the full Monty. You have to get all the way through.
So right now we're currently set to go before start going before LSAC in February, and we've already got that process. So, but what that really means is that me and the commissioner and the rest of the staff have to work on getting that stuff put together probably before Christmas. And so that's heavy work goes on then. And then we'll start by going before the superintendents, having them review things. Then we'll go through the Board of Education. And obviously, you guys will have an opportunity to look at things as well. But that is the goal, is to get it through on that. And I think we'll certainly hold ourselves up, or hold our own feet to the fire in that time frame. But that process has already started. The good thing is that we've got a good framework for last year. We moved through very quickly, and that process is closed, and we are now able to focus in solely on this next set of regulations going through.
And in a 30-second reminder, remember, a lot of this came out of executive orders made during the pandemic that didn't have to go through a bunch of regulatory approval. So they changed the way all regulations go through. And they made it just a little slower so they can be sure they've had time to be vetted. We just happen to get caught up in that.
Where we're at right now, but I think we'll follow up with you guys with any further discussion.
Item 2.2.2, status of legislative discussions.
Just real briefly, we've had that between all of us, we've probably had, I'm going to say 30 different individual meetings with legislators. They're very receptive to the change that the board made and the schools approved regarding subjecting a quicker period of ineligibility or shorter period of ineligibility for those kids that didn't play. A large portion, they're very receptive to that. There's still a tremendous amount of discussion regarding homeschool students and their ability to play. We'll see what comes out of that. I have indicated to them at your all's request that we likely would not be initiating any change in that area, but we would respect any change that they decide to make. So that's really all we can do in that issue. But they've been positive, and we really try in a budget session. We're not impacted. It's a longer session, so things can happen differently than we plan. But we really try to stay below the radar, and we want to try to support our schools and their issues that they're going after that certainly are not related to athletics, their funding, et cetera. So we try not to be a distraction. This is a really challenging session coming up because of the way the fact it's a budget session. Everybody that we've run into in the hallways over there that's going to see them is generally got their hand out. And the first thing we tell them is we're not asking for any money. And that kind of eases the conversation there. But I think that they're watching. I think they're aware. We've got a couple that are very interested in helping us with 13B and some alternative timelines where we can potentially speed up. But it's a little bit like we all advise people, that's ever been in officiating knows you're always told to hustle, but don't hurry. And we have to be careful that we don't put our staff in a position where they're hurrying and missing things. We got to be sure they can keep them moving, but get everything done correctly. So they've been very positive discussions, and Top Shelf continues to do a great job.
Item 2.2.3, bylaw 11, financial aid rule report, update on membership file.
Yeah, you probably saw, I copied you all on the reminder notice to schools on Monday, and it was a pretty big list who had not submitted. But I checked again this morning. There was a little over 80 schools, I think, that had not reported. And after I sent that reminder, we've already received over 70 responses back of those 80 missing schools. So we're just looking at 10, 12 schools who haven't submitted. So I will follow up with them. We'll get their submission and then we'll do a full analysis. We did change a few questions on the financial aid survey this year with regard to some of the changes in legislative. Commissioner helped us adjust that to ask some different questions of our schools. But I'll bring a full report back to you with what I hate to say it that way, but like red flags or things that I question the school about, and then whether or not most of the time I can clear that up. It's normally a misunderstanding, or there's been times where we found issues in this survey as well. So I'll bring you that report in the January meeting.
In your agenda material, there is a significant recap that we've had in the orientation for a couple of years, and it's about the activities around 2004 to 6 when this rule first came into place. This rule was actually, yes, it was a collaborative effort with the office and a couple of authors, but this rule came from the non-public schools who recognized the need to have some checks and balances on themselves with regard to financial aid. Too many schools with independent discretion to give money wherever they wanted to, weren't having to report. And I think that it has been, it was proposed primarily by the non-public schools and certainly resoundingly accepted by the public schools that were involved as an accountability measure. As administrators turn over in different schools, they may have different feelings about that. But obviously, we're going to continue to, I just want you all to know where it came from and the fact that we're going to continue to police it and get those reports. And yes, they're cumbersome. They don't just affect the non-public schools, quite frankly, they affect public schools as well. And so it's important that we have that checks and balances between all types of our members. So it's going to stay in place. So, and it's already, by the way, it's already been through federal review in the court case in the early 2010 period and supported. So we're standing by it. It's a very critical rule. I found it interesting in the New York material you have in your packet that one of the requests from their school, one of the things their big task force came up with was a financial aid rule. So they had ours, and I'm kind of glad we were able to share and help them with the problem that they're having with their schools too.
Item 2.2.4, process for complaints concerning coach and personnel non-contest conduct.
So we went through as part of a legislative review that was initiated by the General Assembly, where the Kentucky Department of Education got to sit down with the APA, the auditors, and they did a program review of that entire department. There was a portion of that that applied to the Kentucky High School Athletic Association, as we are the designated agent of KD in terms of our interscholastic athletics and management thereof. That report went really well. Obviously concerned anytime an auditor comes in. It wasn't really about fiscal auditing as much as it was overall program. And they brought up a couple things in there. We're just this is our way of housekeeping and following up on that. They had some concerns because we didn't have a process of tracking complaints that were made of coaches and other non-coaching people that related to athletics in some way. Typically, it would be maybe there's a Title IX complaint, or maybe they don't like that this coach was hired over this coach, or maybe the coach was having an inappropriate relationship with a student. These things are not within our jurisdiction at the association, especially if they don't happen within contest. Those would be local issues for the school district to manage and address. So we have typically not tracked those because they're not anything that we can do. Nevertheless, they did point out that they thought maybe it would be a best practice to have a record of those and make sure that we're doing our referrals the way that we do. We routinely refer people back to the school district, CFHS, or local law enforcement if that's necessary. We've always been good about that, and the fact that some of these are mandatory report type of issues that come up. So what I think the commissioner and I have been looking at is how do we do this in a way that allows us to have a good tracking mechanism to manage these things appropriately. We've looked at some products out there. I think the commissioner will talk to you a little bit about a product that he has identified that we're going to take a look at that would be a software package. The key is making sure we maximize our use of it. So I think you'll see that we'll find some other ways to utilize that in tracking, whether it's ongoing investigations, reports of Title IX issues, or report of coaching personnel issues that are not within our jurisdiction, but it'll note that we received it, that we've dealt with it, how we just dispelled it, or how we appropriately discharged our obligation, and be able to produce that if anybody comes back and needs to follow up to make sure that we're doing it. Commissioner.
Well, Ms. Hudson was very helpful in identifying a couple alternatives of things that they're separate, they're web-based, they're not in our system, they're not tied to anything we've got to maintain. And so we're signing up for that. But as Chad said, one of the things I didn't want to do, frankly, is if we get 2 reports a year on a specific issue that was identified by the APA report, I don't want to spend resources just on that. We can do those in a notepad. Well, in fact, there's some things we really want to fine tune around here in tracking for your own information too, where we are on things, when things were there. We got that with the Model 6 cases. We got that with things like that. But the general things we think can tie back, and it doesn't mess with our data system. It doesn't mess with anything else. So Mandy was very, very helpful with that. Obviously, if you're a business like Toyota, you probably have to do tracking quite a bit. So she was able to really help us. Her IT team was helpful. So we'll be able to give you a first look at that February probably with we're still playing with what the reports might look like. We're only going to have to, basically because of the cost, we're probably only going to have a couple of people that can access it, which I guess is good. We'll make sure those are done and set up correctly. But we are responding to that recommendation from the Audit of Public Accounts, and we want to make sure that you all are aware of that.
2.2.5, the motions to accept the regulatory reports as submitted and direct any necessary action. Item 2.3.1, discussion of timing of administrators' meetings.
Just have had a reach out for a year and a half now that we've rescheduled a meeting. We've had a couple of sub meetings, but the current president of the Athletic Directors Association and the incoming president have reached out. We're Mr. Cope and I are going to meet with them in the coming weeks, and I think they're really trying to do some things to address the early training of ADs that come on board. As David is wont to say, and we all understand it. The fall is, especially for a new AD, it's just simply grab hold and hold on. And really, they want to try to push more of a mentoring program. Can we align with that? Can we help them with that? So it's going to be interesting, but I just wanted you to know that topics continue to be discussed. And I know that both Mr. Wesselman, who's the current president, and Mr. Junker, who's coming in, that's a collaborative effort of theirs and the board of that organization. So we'll know more a little bit later about what that timing would be. We've looked at some arbitrary timing of certain, like new administrators workshop, but as you all have reiterated, and it's not just David, I tease him about this, all the AD, the fall is such a 12-week death march. Trying to do too much in the fall around regional meetings and around schedule of everything else, it's just really challenging to find that perfect date. And we prefer not to get into something that's remote, because in all honesty, you could do training that's remote, but where we have found the value in both the regional meetings and the advanced meetings in the past is that break interaction where they can come up and ask that specific question. They don't want to look stupid in front of the big group. They don't, it works better with that in person. So we'll see what they propose. I don't know if they're going to ask for any funding. I know that they constantly point out to me a couple of states that the state association helps fund it. So we'll see when we get the final proposal.
Hey, just a thought. I know that Zoo had mentioned about the November. I know my AD has said kind of the same thing because I know that they do that conference now in April, and it's very difficult. School, it's late April too. It's getting ready to end baseball, so there's so many things going on at that point. It's difficult, and he'd even also mentioned he says November is the best month of the year for an athletic director because there is that little bit of a I mean, you still may have some football going on, but you still don't have all these things happening. And I just didn't know if there was any conversation about them having that conference then, and then that could ignite some of those other things for the year, and it could be more proactive instead of reactive. But I don't know if that's ever been mentioned.
This is probably the 25th year we've mentioned that. And there's so many logistical things around the spring, and especially the current. It's been in Louisville for a number of years. That it's so we will continue to mention because that is the feedback we're getting too.
Yeah, okay.
We're getting the same feedback.
2.3.2, the recommended motions to accept the reports of membership meetings is submitted and directing necessary action. 2.4.1, TPG sponsorship review.
Yeah, this is the one meeting they're not required to be here in person, but that you do have a written report. I think one of the things to highlight out of that is the fact of the government shutdown has affected them as well in signing some and completing some contracts and some deals. So.
2.4.2, main office technology and maintenance update report.
Well, just so you know, this is likely, we moved in here in February of 1992. This may be the first time the heating and air has been in this room. They did finally complete the work that you all authorized a year ago. It's maybe the first time it's at least a stable temperature and not one temperature over by the door where Chuck is and another temperature up top where Amy and her group are sitting. So yeah, it's good. They finally finished it. We did end up with a total replacement of our fire system, just so you know. Mr. Tatum is a patient man, but after 6 months of our former contractor not fulfilling what they promised, we canceled the agreement and sought another one. And we're thankful that all of that is we now have fire protection back where it should be. We do have two other things about the physical plant, one of which we will address in the current year budget. If you look, Tri-State is about it's one of the few companies in this area that does the steel roofs like we have and the steel gutters. They will be their quote is to replace our guttering. This is original guttering. If you want, just walk around. This is 1992 steel that's been out in the rain and snow. If you walk around, you'll see a variety of things. So this year's budget included the replacement of the guttering by Tri-State. It did not. We do not currently have in the budget the other item that we've been asked about, which will convert the rest of our lighting in the office to LED. That's the Titan proposal. So we'll come back to you depending on how we do with the fall championships and looking into the winter, and maybe get a budget amendment if we think that's feasible, or we'll put it off a year. But we think that's important to get those two things done.
Item 2.4.3, the recommended motion is to accept the finance and business operations reports as submitted and direct any necessary action. General reports, item 2.5.1, the July 2026 board meeting dates and sites.
Yeah, we just want to make sure it's on everybody's calendars that we are under contract to go back to the Aloft Hotel in Newport, and check-in date would be the 22nd. And
that is different than the week of KSAA that's moved.
Updates on member schools mergers, item 2.5.2.1, Carter County Schools merger with East and West.
Yeah, they issued a letter a few weeks ago. It's included in your record that they had originally planned on an opening date that they're not going to meet. They're going to focus, I believe it's on an area tech center. I have to reopen the letter, but they will be, they have committed to merge. It's just the cost of construction right now is just astronomical for major projects. So they've postponed that a little bit. And then the next item is just an update. Nothing new. Christian County and Hopkinsville, the merger will happen for next year. We are regularly involved with them. There's new issues. This is probably two of the larger schools that have tried to merge in a long time. It's usually involved a big school and a small school, but these are both pretty good sized schools. And I think that sometimes I believe that contacting us and others and some of you is therapy. for their staff that's going through this change and sometimes actually request for help. But we will keep you informed. We know that there's a couple of other districts talking about new schools. And one of them, I think, is just a new building, but the other one is more about a new school, an additional school because of growth. So keep an eye on it.
A surgical execution.
Sorry. Is that $10 for the foundation?
Surgical execution.
Wow.
Item 2.5.3 Hall of Fame Screening Committee information.
Just attached, you have some two reports that do not consider them final because I think we have a couple of applications that have been received and are probably not completely logged. But those of you that are first and third year board members will be part of a much larger group that screens the nominees for this year. And you'll have the unenviable task of trying to reduce a number in the 80s and 90s down to a manageable number to be considered. And that will be sometime around Thanksgiving. We'll make sure we got every entry done and get you the instructions out. Y'all have been really good about getting those in and getting them back. And then the second and fourth year people will take over after the screening is done, and we'll be able to assist with a much larger group that will be doing the actual selection for this year. So we try to get that done in time to where all the pomp and circumstance that we do can be done professionally and ready for that induction in first part of May, last part of April. Date this year?
26.
Yeah, so the week before the Derby. So a week earlier. The facility down there drives when we have that banquet. Some years they're available the Derby weekend, and some they're available the weekend before. So it depends on that.
Item 2.5.4 reminders regarding football finals and state basketball.
You all will get the update document probably tomorrow. Reminder about the football championships. We're trying to get tickets on sale either tomorrow or Monday. This board meeting coming during the day we were shut down for a day due to Veterans Day has really kind of cramped my plans, at least for a Friday. But we got to finalize that. Those tickets will go on sale. There's no change in configuration of how we're doing the games. Matter of fact, the schedule stayed the same for about the fourth year in a row. And there's lots of reasons why certain games are when they are, but logistics is the 95% reason. Certainly, we are very cognizant of Nichols Hill Road traffic on Friday afternoon and making sure we've got a good enough gap to get people home. If those of you have driven on that road in the afternoon know it's a different challenge. So it works well, the schedule we have right now. You'll get a reminder on the state basketball 9+ event. So that's the state basketball tournament. We'll get you that information out where you'll have the form where you can request hotel room. We did re-sign with the Hilton for another 3-year period to manage us. They have, again, I talked earlier in some cases about people wanting you being important. They've really been over backwards even through renovation to try to accommodate you all and accommodate our needs there with all of our workers. So, and they are certainly more price competitive than maybe other nearby hotels. It works out really well. So just some reminders if you have individual questions. I will try to have as I did, I think last year, either a call or a quick meeting with the first year people just to be sure the questions get answered because it's different when you haven't been through it.
Item 2.5.5 reports from around the state and nation.
You don't see, there's only a couple of those that we would have put. That's a normal item for us, but let's suffice it to say there's more going on than we like among state associations and the involvement of their legislatures and or the courts. And we'll be able to give you a full update in January. First part of January, we meet with the directors of all the states and can get a really accurate list of what's going on.
Item 2.5.6, the recommended motions to accept the general reports as submitted and direct any necessary action. Item 2.6, discussion of strategic plan initiatives and data to be collected. 2.6.1 for different types of schools and championships.
Well, 2.6.1 and 2.6.2 are background information. That's why they're listed as just information. A lot of that concerns our membership issues that came up in the mid-2000 period, 2004 through 6 period. We've had that in the orientation material every year. But certainly to avoid repeating mistakes of the past, you need to be aware of the past. So that information is in there. If you have any questions, feel free and let us know. But obviously, our legislature, our governance is a little different because we are a state agent, because we're directly by regulation responsible to the State Board of Education as their designee for athletics. So we have to be really careful we don't violate things like equal protection. And by making some arbitrary decisions, we have to avoid those. And we just have to operate within a certain set of parameters. The other thing that I was asked this week to kind of share, and I thought I'd show you our report plus the report from some other states. But if you look at 2.6.2, the question came about our type of schools. And we now have, I believe it's 8 different types of schools that are members, if you look at that list. And we have, ironically, about the same number of public schools that we had in mid-2000s. Somebody asked me for that comparison number. It's almost identical. And then we have had a few more non-publics join with the failure of another Christian school conference, but some of those have not stayed very long. They've headed right back out. So the membership, we've also got 3 new schools that are A5 schools. They're all located in Jefferson County, which are a different type of school than they're technically a public school. They're out of the Jefferson County area, but with Grace James and Du Bois and Newcomer, they are unique setups trying to address very specific issues. So you always get that kind of discussion. You always get that kind of question. We just want to make sure you know the composition of our membership. And the state of New York has been going through, their athletic association has been going through a similar study to what we went through and what we talk about all the time. We're all the time talking about membership issues. And there's some pretty good correspondence in there. And one of the things that they've got some federal interpretation on dealt with equal protection. It's just kind of not an alarm bell, but it's something we need to be aware of, that you can't just say you don't like the A5 schools and they got to go somewhere different, or you don't like the D1 schools and they got to go somewhere different. You can do your championships in different ways, but you have to be really careful that you don't make a procedural mistake with this. So we just giving you the information, because I know that as we talk about item 263, we're gonna come into some discussions that some of that information may be relevant.
So 2.6.3 is the discussion of strategic initiative and the soccer championship trial based on membership feedback.
Well, we've had multiple requests, 2 or 3 from you all, and then we've had requests. We had a request last summer from Brown. We had a request earlier this year from Franklin Simpson, the superintendent down there. I don't know. The board's never taken a stand. But this is a strategic thing. Would you ever want to do something with a championship to take a look and then see how it might apply to others without negatively impacting other things? So a couple of you asked us to be on there, so just figured I'd share it with you. The number of players necessary to play the sport is less in soccer than football, but it's certainly at the same time it's the same. But you don't necessarily have all the different shifts. So it's really up to you all if you want to try to have a discussion to follow up with some of that open comment that's been given, or if we want to just move along and try to fine tune the current. It's kind of up to the board.
Item 2.6.4, the recommended motions to accept the strategic plan initiatives and data issue reports as submitted and direct any necessary action.
And for the audience, all those items in 2 are simply reports. There was never expected to be any action. That's just reports we have to give. Thank you.
Item 3, items for review for possible action at a subsequent meeting. Basketball alignment, 3.1.1, basketball alignment review and discussion.
To introduce the item, I know that we've had a lot of discussion about a Region 8 proposal that's not specific to basketball, but certainly basketball is the target, and then it affects so many others. And as well as Frankfurt's request that they made in the summer, actually last winter was the first discussion. And we haven't had a time where we've had just an education session or something around just looking at the different region maps. Everything we do generally involves a map. You can look in the Region 8 item. There's a map of those schools. We've had the same thing for Region any other region you want, we can bring up. There's a lot of attachments here. Reminder to, because we were very clear in the messaging, even to the 8th region schools, that there's no decision today. You wanted to hear from them. And I think that's very important that you had that public comment. We've got the Frankfurt request has been on the table, so to speak, for a while, without action. The 8th region, we heard this morning, differing opinions. We did give you some information. If you look at the various attachments under Region 8, and they've been public for a couple of days, although we did have some submitted to us just yesterday morning. So you may not have had time to read those if you didn't look at them last night. But there's an alignment review document that we shared with the athletic directors and designated reps of the 8th region at that first meeting. That was, I think, in Henry County, if I'm right. And basically the history of that region has moved. Superintendent Saturday is correct. Frankfurt's placement has been different over the years, but this reference point, we started with the wholesale realignment from 2005-06. You've got that attachment. The other thing that you'll want to look at, I think, and want to digest it a little more, and this is something that the officers asked me to do. If you look at the second handout on the 8th region, where I believe the title of it says it's Region 8 Current Sports. This is using arbiter data, so we're definitely dependent upon arbiter data being accurate. But this is a list of the schools in the region and what all they have. And that factors into some of the comments you all heard about schools that may not have a full offering. And do we really detonate everything because that one? So it's important to look at that comprehensive look. And as a matter of fact, you have the same list for Region 11 in case you want to look at Frankfurt. Region 11 is one of those regions, as Mr. Kelly and others have pointed out, that almost everybody plays almost everything. So it's a little different maybe than some of the other regions. But that list for Region 8 will show you by school where they are. And this is just a straight data dump from Arbiter. If they say they have a team in that varsity sport, and some of them are helped by the fact that they've got their schedules. We know, for example, Anderson County's probably got baseball because they've already got a game scheduled for March 16th. And that's the best effort we have right now at a report from them, but we're able to just do a data dump and let you look at it. So I think it's important that you know the data as you look between now and January, because January, by your own adopted policy, is when you would make decisions on the basketball alignment. And you do that in January so that the trickle down to the other sports can happen. You've tried to align those together. So there's a lot of data in here. There's the original meeting material that Mr. Marksberry reported, and as I mentioned to a couple of you a couple of weeks ago, just at another meeting, he just drew the short straw for being the president of the 8th Region ADs this year. Senator Aaron Reed has sent a couple of bits of information. Senator Reed, I've talked to him since then. He is a graduate of Shelby County, and he's obviously very familiar with the area, recognizes pros and cons. He's typical. Superintendent Matthews is new to the district in Shelby County, but that comment was in the public comment, but is also here. And then Gallatin County sent some feedback. There's also some mileage and time charts you may want to print out because the font's pretty small. But using the Google API, there's both distance and time on those charts. It's the old AAA cross-reference charts. So just wanted you to have all that. It's up to you all where you go next. In the rationale, there's a map link, and you all have used those maps in the past to try to help you with some decisions. You may have to shrink it, move it just a little bit, but obviously you can see the cluster groups of those schools on a map. It's pretty easy to see where they lay and where the overlap might be. So all of that is just stuff for you to digest, because that's why it's in this section, and not expecting any decision today. This is more just about information.
Any change would take effect 27, 28, or 26?
6/27 if you adopt in January and make that decision. You can set the implementation. The past is you do it in January, so it goes into effect the next school year.
I probably should know the answer to this, but most of us are on 2-year cycles, with 26, 27 being the second year of contracted games. How would all that work?
Yeah, there's enough. There's always been enough openings in a schedule to handle a schedule adjustment need to be made. different than football where it's so regimented.
Is this the appropriate time where we give eighth region guidance on what we would want them to do?
I think you've got some policy decisions to determine first. Yeah, you could. Hey, you're the board. You can do anything you want. But if you, the direction out of the first meeting, and I'm not by nature argumentative, but the direction out of the first meeting was they wanted to try to get rid of 3s and 6s. And it was said, then you all come up with a way. The next meeting, we don't know what happened. I don't think a lot of people were there other than I don't doubt that they were accurate in their analyses. But if you're going to want something, this would be the time to specify it, or you tell them to wait till January or you make a decision that you're not going to advance this on the agenda. You got lots of options. But if there's certain things you wanted to specify in further action, you want to make sure that's done process-wise. And I don't know that I think you'd want discussion to make sure things didn't affect another region that was doing this, or do you want to target it just for the 8th? It's really your all's call.
It's just something because it's been confusing to me, and I have to make sure, because I was led to believe by reading or hearing one part that there had been some suggestion by the KHSAA to that region that they wanted to eliminate the 6 and 3 team districts. But I'm hearing you say that that's something that would come about internally with the 8th region, that suggestion did not come from KHSAA.
When I specifically, and I would challenge everybody in here to deny that when I was there at Henry County, I said, the only thing you've agreed on is that you want to try to eliminate the 3s and 6s. And yes, that's what they said. That's as far as it got.
But that would be for them to determine if they want to eliminate the 3s and 6s.
They could change their mind now.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's all that day, that was the consensus, is that we don't like 3s and 6s. We don't like the baseball thing. We don't like, but that was not binding. That was not official. That was just their discussion at that point. From there on out, they had 3 more weeks before they met again.
Let me ask you a question. So if they go back after today and discuss and either come up with an idea or a plan, and I know we had even, tossed around this idea that now that we've seen the 6, because from what I heard, baseball was one of the things brought up because some, advantages there may be in a smaller versus bigger district. But as we know now in the 6th and the 7th region, it seems to be working well for baseball and softball to do that super regional format. If that was really the sticking point, I just didn't know if they go back and meet, there would still be time for them to submit whatever in that January meeting. We could still put that on the agenda and make a final decision on anything, so it would be effective for the following year. Or do we have to decide today any type of decision?
No, I think it's an open item.
Okay.
I do think that what you said at the last meeting was if people adopted a plan you had approved, that we wouldn't need to come back before the board. They could do because I think specifically, and Dave, you might have been copied in this, when the thing came yesterday from Eastern with their request about the 7th, very quickly they said, no, it's exactly the same as the 6th. So there was no need for further board action. If they deviate, we may have to have more done in January to talk about it.
Okay. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. No, I was just curious.
That's one of the options. It could be a targeted solution around baseball, softball. It could be a whole move. It could be everything in between.
And did I hear correctly earlier that we have an overall vote tally, but we don't know which school voted which way?
That was their decision. They made the decision was made that they did not need a recorded vote like you do every time you go in the ballot box in November. They could make that. You all didn't do that. If you wanted to request that they make an accounted vote, it may solve the issue. You may find out it's not 2/3, and therefore they just need to keep working. That's what happened in the 11th region, discussion about the super regional. They went back, took another vote. All of a sudden, they said, we didn't get 2/3. Let's move on. That may be where that happens. Whatever you all want to let you better make a decision. If you want, then you get to decide, here's the thing about ultimately the board's responsible. You can't abdicate. But if in fact there's not agreement, you still could make a decision. You're not locked out. But if you want more data around this one to where you feel better, tell them what you need.
I think what they need us to say is that we're not putting pressure on how their districts look,
Nope.
that they can go back and figure that out and
Absolutely.
then come back to us in January.
Would it be fair to say that we need to make a decision on the Frankfurt request before the eighth region can know what their options are at that point?
Fair point. I think we have a lot to consider. My suggestion is, I don't have enough information, even though everybody's here, respect everybody. This has all just been brought to us. We've been looking at stuff. I would hope you all could make some decisions at the eighth region, but at the same time, I don't want to see us making some type of decision today, and we need to be more informed.
I guess my curiosity is, I was at the first meeting, and I think it was made clear, like, the goal is to keep this at a local level and keep it within the eight, right? To keep it within is a region decision. And I'm just curious, is because I was not at the second meeting, as to what, when the vote went up to 13-6, I think was the final vote to submit a plan to us. What was, to me, that's telling me that's a plan that we like. Why else would you submit that to this board and vote on it and it passed 13-6 and then it be a discussion point of, well, that's not really what we wanted. We were just told to get a plan. I'm just curious how that came about. Does that make sense at all? Like, why would you vote to send something here with, and then it be, well, that's not really what we thought was, like, we didn't want to send it here and it not happen. I guess it's probably just curious. I mean, I'm just curious. I don't know if that's a legit question. And
Are you wanting them to speak?
yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. Like anybody, I'm just out of my curiosity. Like if I was to be in there and vote 13-6, and this is what's going to Lexington to set in front of, I would assume that's what we are presenting as a local solution, because from the first meeting, that is what came out of the first meeting, is that if you can keep a local decision, that's the way we like to operate.
I think the one thing that you want to be guarded about is is going back too much in the past about why and what happened. I think that if you want a reaffirmation, then probably what you would want to ask is somebody put down on paper exactly what the plan is, take a vote per school, get that back to us in January, and let's see how it goes. I think anything else where you start, because with due respect, I think the number one thing that happens in this particular venue and around this subject and has for years is if you don't like the final product, argue about the process. So quit worrying about the back stuff. And maybe you all want to just give them direction. Look, we really need to know on the record how all 19 schools feel about this, period. And if it's all of a sudden, if it's like the thing that you all did, and it's 11-8, then we don't have 2/3. You still look at it. I don't know. It just seems like that's the one missing thing versus too much about, why would this happen and that happen? Because everybody's recollections are going to favor what they want. But this time you would have, boom, vanilla right here. I got something in I got 19 yes or no.
Yeah. Recorded vote.
If that's what you want for
on the decision on the Frankfurt issue, I'm assuming that's going to be an internal regional decision on the third part as to which district they would move into if we allow that.
No, that's where it doesn't get local. Unless if you were to say that you want to, that you approve them moving out of the 11th, maybe it's part of this conversation. But you've got to make some assumptions there that geography doesn't matter. This is a one-time isolated case. You got to do some things. Then maybe that is part of their discussion. That's the very reason why when I reached back out to the Frankfurt people, I said, this is the meeting y'all got to be done, because this is too tangled up. You can't separate the two requests.
I tend to agree, though. I think that might be a decision that needs to be made prior to the
exactly.
Frankfurt has to be decided before they can sort everything else out.
Yep.
I also think, doing reference to earlier, just think back to the eighth region. We have 6 districts or 6 schools in a single district who not too long ago all came together in agreement to stay in the district and want to continue to stay in agreement. I mean, in one district together. Man, because there's enough numbers in the rest of the region to outvote the one district who wants to stay together. That's just a tough one
Man, I think maybe that's an option that's floated back like,
Absolutely.
because I think they're two different, like we've talked before. The initial thing is Cornerstone coming into the, right? And Frankfurt with the ideal, Frankfurt's wanting it like, so that's creating the trickle out issues of, okay, well now, from what I've heard from ADs, there's a competitive advantage to a 3-team district. So that gives us a chance to move somebody there and to solve that. And then, well, if we say that we move somebody, we're saying we can't have 6 here, so we can't have 6 there. And I don't know if all that needs to go hand in hand or if it doesn't need to,
The
go
thing
hand in
that,
hand.
the thing I've learned through 2 years of doing this that's been eye-opening for me is that when you live in a certain area and you work in a certain area, you get polarized to your region or your schools or what's going on. And the thing I found most fascinating is that, as we've seen with a lot of these different things that have come forth, and just like the 6th region with their super region idea, and when they come in and presented it, made perfect sense and it was successful. And what's happened in the 15th region. But I found it interesting, as been said here, that if you do have 6 schools that all unanimously want to keep that, like in the 15th region, that would never fly. I mean, like everybody, like there's no way we want a 16 district. But if you've got a situation where it's working and all 6 want to do that, I think those local decisions are important.
So that's where a vote would have to come in, where you would have to be recorded, because I think the vote we have now, I don't think we know who voted yes and who voted no.
And I think, Mr.
It wouldn't do
Phillips,
us any justice to assume that either.
no, because any assumption is going to be bad in this one.
Correct.
But like you said, from talking to 4 of the teams in one district, I think there was a presumption that they couldn't fix 1-6 without fixing the other, and they need to understand the options. And that's I said this during the COVID pandemic when I was talking to the legislature about playing sports. The beauty and the beast of local control is it's ugly because it's not always consistent. And they went a different path. Do you all have a path you want them to follow, or do you want to take the one issue first and then ask them for a path? I think that's what you're left with between now and the end of the work session and into the actual voting meeting. You're going to have to decide the direction you want. And it may be as simple as 2 or 3 criteria for a vote. It may be, look, we're going to you want to take a separate vote on each one? Is there one vote on the preservation of I still call it the River District, sorry, but the 16 district, they take one vote there, and 6 of them decide, and then take the other. You're going to have to tell them how you want them to resolve it, because you have so much diversity of opinion on this issue that you're probably going to have to further define a process.
Yeah.
Totally different than the other one you got coming, where the 9 and the 2 districts said, hey, let's go, switch.
The thing that spurred this in the beginning, though, if I'm correct, right, is Cornerstone Christian having to be placed into a situation. So something I just thought of earlier, in light of, and it's just something, and they, as far as these people not being in the room, but in looking at those options, it does seem like that if the 6th and 7th have employed that because of baseball being a situation, if Cornerstone is competing in basketball and the other sports, then being the new team in, could the option be for them to go in the 3-team district with the Oldhams and then everyone else stay the way it is, if that's how everybody wants it to be, and then maybe look at a super region format for baseball, softball. And that may be.
I don't think an alignment should predicate forcing a super regional on people.
I'm not saying forcing it. I'm just saying that's something they probably never even considered or looked at.
Now, would an option be for them? Because I know in the 5th, the district for soccer is different than basketball because of the lack of teams. So would that be an option for them where they could decide baseball, softball district is this, and then your basketball district is you keep it normal or whatever?
I think you could decide that. I think you could ask them if they want to decide that. You could do a couple of different ways. Yeah, how local you want to make it to where do they want to shoot? I've used the expression with you all about shooting with a rifle instead of a shotgun. If we just want to aim at the baseball problem, which is not the whole problem, but if you just want to aim at that, they've got some options. Maybe they do their baseball different. They had a brief discussion about that the day we were up there because they were talking about the park at Northern Kentucky. What used to be the semi-pro team.
But the old heads in us here don't remember there was a time when I was in a different volleyball district than I was in a soccer district than I was in a basketball district, and it came from this body before I was here, that there was some push to have all districts aligned in all sports.
There is that a desire that came from the Athletic Directors Association years ago in the principals group. But once as long as you're in the same region, the district is not as absolute because everybody doesn't play everything. Yeah. It's always worked. From this group, when we realigned, we tried to mirror them down. You can't do that in soccer. We have a couple of regions. Don't you still have a couple of exits, two districts?
Yeah.
You just do what you have to do.
Yeah, because we also align soccer, it's, we have two genders playing. And so you might have the boys are playing at this school, the girls aren't, vice versa. We do have some districts that occasionally occur, and especially, when it takes the number that it takes for soccer to put a field, the team on the field, that can vary from year.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything off the table, but I think the more variables you introduce, the harder it's going to be for them to reach consensus. So you're going to have to try to figure where you want to shoot at.
Essentially, we have to decide as a board today if we want to vote for Frankfurt and then make movement on 8th region guidance.
Or
that's what they mean.
Or
we just send it back and we still hold off.
Which we could still send it back if we vote on Frankfurt, correct? With that variable in there.
So, okay.
Would we
So,
have to
I was thinking the
decide-
Frankfurt's discussion today and vote next time.
No, we
could
have the
actually
option to vote today if it impacts the 8th, correct? Is that what we're thinking?
Competition rule, you have complete jurisdiction over. You have past practices, you have policies where you don't normally, and it's in the part of the adopted regulation that you don't make changes in the basketball alignment final till January. We just got a conflict here of two potential alternatives.
I think we still feel like we sure hope the 8th region can figure something out, and we really would like for that to happen amongst you all. It seems like when I started hearing things, I was getting like, we're confused on this, we're confused on this. I see a little bit clearer picture that you come here today and present. But it still would be nice, because we're sitting here trying to figure out a little bit of short notice. Hey, what's the best thing to do? Put it on our plate. We don't mind taking that vote, but again, it would be nice if you could solve this. And I think making a vote today, I don't know.
I think that
they can't.
that
they
caveat
can't
hanging
do
over.
that
Yeah.
Unless we're asking them to come up with two different plans based on what we did with Frankfurt. I mean,
Yeah, you're not gonna get nothing solved if they think, well, to me, I would say it's gonna be hard if the Frankfurt Nugget is still out there.
So would we decide where Frankfurt goes, or is like
Oh,
the board? We would
that's you.
decide.
It's a yes or no. Do you allow them to move from the 11th to the 8th? And then what the discussion seems to be is if that vote is a yes, then that factors into the 8th region dividing their teams.
And then could the 8th region just not do anything? Could they have is it possible for them to have 216 districts?
Basically what they have right now.
Yeah, I mean, could they just keep it the way?
I'm gonna ask, and this is maybe out of ignorance, if geography is the main criteria, can you move one school out of Franklin County and not move all three of the schools out of Franklin County? Or is that what's been the holdup over the time, is we can't move one and not the other two?
Historically, you have not done that.
But that's been the
You have the
justification.
ultimate. Yep.
There's a school in Northern Kentucky, and there's 3 different regions.
The other thing is
County.
assistant. That's up to Mr. Kelly.
Yeah.
Had opportunity in public comment.
We had all these opportunities, and it would be out of our norm to allow for discussion now.
I said what I was gonna say in May.
Want to do, board?
We have to look at the Frankfurt situation first.
You do that today or wait till January?
You wait till January, you're not gonna have a decision on 8th region realignment, because it has to be made in January, correct, Commissioner?
Yes, it's normally done, that's in the policy. Yeah.
Well, wait a second, but you said earlier, or somebody I thought said earlier, that it could be if they wanted to look at, as a plan where Frankfurt would come in and a plan where they didn't. Yep. I mean,
But at that point, you let an eighth region decide if Frankfurt comes in or not. Did you say that's our decision?
Now, you all have to, them making a contingent decision is different than making that one, because I can't help but think that down the road, the approval of one move might lead to a request for even further moves of somebody out,
I
potentially
just
just
think
switching.
I think there's going to be some confusion in the eighth region when they left the first meeting saying, if you can handle this locally and get it to the board, like if we can keep it here. And I felt like, to me, a 13 to 6, like, once again, whether, and maybe there's some confusion and maybe taking it back to them is the right thing to do. But I just think there's going to be confusion within the district or within the region as to, well, we voted on it, tried to get it there, and nothing came of it. So you're sending it back to us.
I think you send it, if that's the scenario, then send it back and have them record the vote and see if it comes back the same way. And I don't know that it would, just based off of feedback that we've gotten from the support for Gallatin to stay. If the support's for Gallatin to stay in the current district they were in, then that vote doesn't match to what was recorded.
See,
And that's the process.
If I can massage this a little bit, what I'm hearing from you all, it sounds like to me that if you were going to send something back, it's actually two issues. It's a yes or no vote on the 16 river districts staying together, and a yes or no vote on aligning the other districts. Because I think that there are decidedly different issues.
But I think out of those two things, a decision on Frankfurt would probably need to be made before so I agree with the two things, yes, but I think there's an overarching, is another school going to be considered to come in?
Let me ask this. Is there anybody that would make a motion to accept Frankfurt's request to move to the eighth region?
Well, can we talk a little bit more before somebody make a motion?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out.
we're in a work session anyway, right? So I mean, you're just asking if
Yeah, I'm
somebody
trying to
would.
feel like, is there enough support that the board may make that decision?
So would it be a standalone? There's no domino. Nobody's leaving the eighth region if they come in. Because if a school is to leave the eighth region, that school would need to have the ability to come down and give their point of view. If we're talking about removing a school from eighth
So
region.
that their request is for them to move in.
I think the only
We
way.
could do anything.
Yeah, but there's no request to move anybody out. Yeah, no request to move anybody out. I mean, I would definitely entertain making that motion, given the weird extenuating circumstances that they're under. So I would consider it.
I'm still confused on the vote the last vote they had, because what I heard an individual say was, that they didn't actually vote on what the proposal was. They were only voting on sending it to us.
Well, yeah, right. I'm with you. I think what I gathered from it was they started with like 6 proposals, and I think as you get into the emotion of a moment and trying to narrow something down, all of a sudden you're voting on something that now, in retrospect, you're realizing, wait a second, maybe there were, if we could have looked at the whole gamut of options, that it would be a whole different outcome, like you said, if it was brought back for them again. I think it would be wrong for us just to accept.
I guess that was my question a while ago. Like, if this was happening in another part of the state, and somebody walked in and said the first region has this issue, and the vote was 13 to 6 to sit here, I would assume that the people that sent it here and voted on it sent it because they knew the plan and like, yeah, here it is, take it. But I don't know if that's what happened in that meeting. I guess it's probably, yeah, like.
You need some time to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most of us feel like we probably need to make a decision today in the board meeting on Frankfurt request. Okay. Item 3.1.1.3, the foundation request to move to District 13 and Region 4.
It was a little more straightforward. We received a request. Actually, 3 years ago, we realigned the 4th region, moved 3 teams because Foundation Christian became eligible. That's the only similarity to this current one. And Foundation Christian was placed in the district with the rest of the Warren County, Bowling Green area schools. They came to us with a request in the fall, requesting to move from a 5-team district to a 4-team district, which would make that new one 5. And all 9 schools have signed off and consented that they agree to that move. Tyler, is there anything else to those?
I know. It was a roll call vote by alphabet, and every school had to vote in front of everybody else, and we knew exactly where everybody was. It was a 9-0 vote.
Wow, why can't everything be that easy?
Item 3.1.2.1, the wrestling alignment and format discussion.
Mr. Angolia has been working along with all of us to work on all this crap. But anyway, we've been looking at alignment possibilities, and I think the consensus, and Joe, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have experimented. We've got a variety of different, data tools we've looked at. There's no simple fix to the alignment that's going to address a problem that's developed. We shared with you a lot of data at the summer meeting in September about imbalance. We found that some regions have a whole lot of heavyweights, the top 5 weight classes, and some have a whole lot of smaller weights, but they don't divide geographically very easy. So the problem has been, as Mr. Angola has talked to his people about, and I want him to go into detail, but that the regional tournaments are getting to be where we don't have facilities that can really hold the size of those tournaments. And so the thought has been, do we look at taking wrestling back the way it was before into smaller groups, and then those advancing to a region, and then those advancing onto the state. So basically having where we don't have these marathon regional tournaments that are going on. And staffing's been a problem as well. Joe, anything, a couple other things. I know a lot of it's in the rationale, but
yeah, no, I mean, our coaches and our officials are great recruiters and promoters for wrestling. We might have as many as 10 new teams this year. So that's going to add to our numbers. A lot of these new teams, though, they might only enter 4 or 5 kids in a bracket in the postseason. But still, that comes into areas where you might have more than 16, require an additional round, have to start the night before. So these events are kind of outgrowing their facility, and the regions, they want to cram it all into a small gym and 3 mats. It just doesn't work. So this is kind of a way to address that and try and contain those region events a little bit better.
I think what we'd like to get the board's approval on today is that because it's been out there that there's a potential realignment, that we're not going to do that for this season, and that we can come back to you with potentially a survey binding results-based instrument we can get, where we come up with something on going district, region, state, and how that would look around the state, including the pairings of the regions. Maybe bring that to you in February to look at adopting for next school year. It's really, at this point, it's settled in, they're scheduled, and there's just no obvious easy answer for the alignment imbalance. Yes, that's okay.
All right, item 3.1.2.2, football alignment and competition rules discussion.
Well, this is just data for you to look at between now and the next meeting, when we'll actually have school data. We do not have enrollments for this year. Won't get those till latter part of November, first part of December, where we can start looking. It's hard to believe we've played one season and we're already looking at reclassing, but you asked for a report on numbers. Now, you may want to, again, print this out because it's pretty small, but we have a couple of schools that, if you look down through there, I think there's 3 that are highlighted. Actually, it's 5 that are highlighted in a very dark color in the column over to the right that says the percent of female. We're trying to look at, can we use the same set of numbers for all classification questions? And one of the things that we are careful about is when you look at a school, like we have a school in Louisville Central, who has a significant amount, 67% of their student body is female. So doing the wholesale alignment based just on their overall student participation is probably not good for their program. And what this data will give us is some thresholds. So maybe to make an adjustment in the schedule, or we do something different with those schools that have greater than 55, greater than 56, whatever percentage we can agree on. But you just ask for that data. There's no decision expected today. So that just kind of gives you what it would look like, and I can detail it for anybody, but I don't want to lengthen this meeting, because until we get the data from the current year, you're looking at school names that may not be the problem once the new data comes out. So, and then of course, there's several schools that have 0% female population because they're all male. So, you know those.
Can you give me a timetable on that? So we're going to discuss, when will we make decisions on alignment for 27, 28?
The original plan was that we would have you a draft in January. You all would adopt in February or potentially May, but it would still be a year out.
But it's going to happen this school year.
It happens this school year, yes.
Is that for another 2 years?
Yeah.
When would scheduling allow to be started? Because you know how this is going to go. Like as soon as that alignment hits, people are going to start chasing games for the.
Yeah, we'll make that determination in January, but normally when the draft goes out, the schedules are locked until you approve a final version. So there'd be that period of time that you would not be able to. We wouldn't enforce contracts that were signed. Doesn't mean you can't commit to it, especially for district weeks. Because your area, and Donna, you know this too, your all's area will probably see the most change in a long time just because of the shift in student population in Jefferson County schools. This one's gained this many, and this one's lost this many. We'll have to see. We don't have the numbers. 2 year cycle, every 2 years. And we found last year that we were one of only about 5, I think, that were on a 4-year class. The rest of the states all do too, just because population keeps shifting. Yep.
Moving to item 4, items for discussion and possible action. Item 4.1.1, approve the minutes of the September 2025 meeting.
That will be on your full agenda item. I'm hoping you'll decide to move that one forward when you do the full work session. 4.1.2, you all asked, we approved some changes in staffing assignments at the last meeting. You all asked it to review that with some of the members of the finance committee and detail the job description changes. So those are all in there for you. One of the things that I am doing after consultation with the finance committee is changing that recommendation to recommend a 5% across the board increase. And then of course the other step changes that are coming. And we certainly have the budget ability to do that.
And item 4.1.3, recommended motions, approve the reports and approve the continued financial operations as recommended. Item 4.2, competition rules. 4.2.1, the results of the diving survey in action.
Well, they're presented. Ms. Jackson's taken over diving from Ms. Bridenbaugh. And again, I remind you that this is solely to try to keep the event alive. It's not a sport. It's one of the events at diving, but we're looking at an alternative format. Feedback you've gotten.
Well, we sent that out to member schools, the schools that have swim and dive. And I think we took out the duplicate answers, and it was 29-14 as far as in favor of going for that 6 dive meets.
So what will happen if you approve that this afternoon, we will then correspond with the National Federation and ask permission to do a 3-year experiment on that. And of course, if anytime during that 3 years, the national rule changes, we can go away from the experiment. But it would allow us, we're really hopeful it would allow us to bring some people into the diving events that maybe have been out for a while because of the difficulty.
Item 4.2.2, revisions in the tennis tournament format.
You've got items there before you. We started talking last spring, and Joe spent a good deal of time at the regional meetings this year talking about the challenges of continuing to try to manage a 64 slot bracket for our singles and doubles tennis and nobody else in the country does that. So you ask us to work with our contacts with both USTA and the people at the seating group, and we've come up with a way that will still allow the same number to advance out of the regional, but we create a state first round. It's very similar to the format in golf. Joe, you want to hit any highlights? Because I know the seating was a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've had to do this in golf and swimming, and this is certainly a facility-driven change. No reduction in who advances from the region, like the commissioner said. And in order to kind of protect, the seeds, where it's a 16-person bracket, we'll be seeding to 8 spots instead of maybe just 2 or 4. So that would give those kids an advantage to maybe get to Lexington after all, if that is a concern. It should protect that. We would prevent teammates from being in the same quadrant, so that would allow them to advance as well and not eliminate each other if they advance. But we would be seeding each of those super regions, first round sites and then reseeding when we get to Lexington for the final round. There will be no change to the team tennis tournament. We'll still bring the 16 region champions forward.
I know the big thing was to try to preserve the 2 days for both the state and the necessary time for the region, and yet not impact the seating, as you said, by not necessarily playing all the way through. The UTR has given us some options we didn't have before, but we just do not have facilities. We know that we have coaches that are concerned if they've got multiple athletes and being able to get back and forth. So we've tried to balance a lot of things. We think the tennis reps and our own staff's done a really good job of just diving into this and finding a way to add this. I think right now the timeline would be the current state individual doubles week, singles and doubles week would become the state first round. It gives schools a lot of flexibility around awards. And then we could do the other when our team is. We can try to be flexible. We know we have to watch. There will be certain people, and it'll be a small number, but there will be certain people who might have a conflict if the tournament gets rained and pushed to later. But we're going to try to avoid that. We think it's a workable alternative.
I think the format of this too, because we're not playing these brackets to completion, personally has to win 2 matches to advance. So you can complete it in 1 day. So that'll certainly cut down on overnight, on a lot of travel. You just got to make 1 trip. Hopefully the weather cooperates and you get it in. So there's no additional hotel stays or anything.
And it's somewhat of a protection for their seeding as well. So that a loss in this first round doesn't necessarily, a loss in the last, having that final match doesn't necessarily hurt your seeding. You still have been able, your body of work is what will help evaluate you.
So obviously, me and Donna, we're tennis people. What we've got to be careful of is, like I will tell you, to win the 7th region tennis tournament is harder than winning the state tournament. There's no doubt about it. That we don't get ourselves in a scenario where we are just eliminating ourselves, where you have pockets of good tennis. Not saying there's bad tennis, but there's pockets of a lot of good tennis, and that now we're going to eliminate each other in the super region so that less of the best players in the state somehow can make it to the final of the state. So I'm just trying to
I think that was
digest
maybe
all
more of a concern when that factored into the team championship.
Yeah, big
no, because the team championship is not being impacted. Everybody's still coming forward. This is only about the singles and doubles champions. And the fact that we're seeding 8 places will protect those better
play
players.
down to the semis,
yeah,
and then you stop.
Correct.
And then all 4 semifinalists
Correct.
in singles and doubles from each super advance to the championship round.
It's actually very beneficial for those areas that have good tennis. But the thought today is that we're telling you the concept. We talk about the concept. We bring you back to final material in January and kind of see exactly, is there a rotation of regions? Is there anything else in there? Or is it just straight seeding? We've got some things to finalize. But I do think the document that the 4 or 5 that were together, because we had Mr. Cope, myself, and Joe, and then our tennis people, they've got a couple of attachments that kind of detail a lot of the stuff in more bullet form. We need to get it in more regulation form where you all can look at it. But it will do both. Because you brought this up in the summer, Dave, the ability to, if we've got to make a change, which we all knew facility-wise, don't ruin it for the ones that play better tennis, honestly.
So do those regions always, like 1 through 4, do they always stay the same, kind of like soccer and all that, like?
Kind of what Julian just kind of made a comment about, we maybe talk in the fall, in the January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we rotate or do we not?
Okay.
I mean, I think if we're not going to seed to 8, that's maybe more of a concern. But I think seeding to 8 protects those players a little bit and gives them a chance to get to Lexington.
Just like earlier comments maybe that were made publicly, sometimes there's going to be a competitive backlash to whatever when people feel like their options getting gored. They're going to want to wait a minute, hold it, it's ruining my good opportunity. We're trying to balance it with the seeding, but yet, at some point you got to play it out. But as Joe said, don't get lost on the fact that for years we were one of the last states to quit doing your team title based on points that you won by winning a match, and now it's really just individual singles and doubles tournament there. So we're hopeful that helps.
So the recommended motions to approve the change in the state tennis tournament for singles and doubles and direct final material and plans to be brought to the January meeting. Item 4.2.3, lacrosse end of game procedures, overtime and margin.
I think that what we would propose, and Ms. Jackson, please tell me if I step sideways, but what we've talked about is, we talked in the summertime about eliminating overtime. There are some perceptions about overtime, and I don't want to say running up the score, but big margins, that we really don't think we have enough data to make a decision yet. But we're asking that you all delay the implementation of that change until we get another year or two worth of data. Am I correct? We don't think it happens that often, and it's one of those tradition things that people that community holds on to. So until we really know we need it, we do want to watch one thing. We gave you this in the summer. We've got a breakdown of margin of the games, and we probably do need to address that at some point, but we need more data than just 1 year.
All right. Recommended motions to delay the implementation of the change related to end game procedures, collect data on overtime contests and margin of victory for future consideration. 4.3 and the other action items.
No, logistical item, but not to during the meeting. So, James, we may be able to get a bunch of boxes of lunch. Ideally, we're going to be done. No, but you're going to need the preparation time. I'll keep talking about.
Sound good.
I was going to play if you're going to pay. If you want to start. Take what it can hold. It's only 11:47. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a yay. Does anybody object to the chicken plate over? Was it Cane's?
Yeah.
Great. We're just gonna try to get a batch order, pick it up and bring it back over. There Cane's over there?
Yeah.
Somebody help with that. You can order it.
We're gonna.
Miss Kara, catering department, Miss Howard.
We're gonna go ahead and adjourn our work meeting, and we'll set 12:30 to come back and start our full board. 12:30.
Hopefully